We invented the word footbed. Think about checking into the most luxurious hotel and sleeping in the most luxurious bed. That's what wearing a pair of Birkenstocks is like every single day. And if the fashionable, quote unquote, fashionable crowd now finds them as part of their wardrobe, that's even better.
The sandal market is where the fashion industry's pricing mythology is most nakedly exposed, because a sandal is the simplest construction in footwear. The brands on this list were chosen by one standard only: construction that justifies the price, leather that ages rather than cracks, footbeds engineered for the foot that will spend hours inside them, and in several cases, a heritage or manufacturing philosophy so deeply embedded in the product that the brand's entire existence depends on not cutting the corners its competitors cut without a second thought. 11 brands, the ones smart women carry into summer and still have on their feet a decade later. Number 11. Birkenstock. Birkenstock earns the opening position on this list not through fashion credibility, which the brand spent decades building reluctantly and almost accidentally, but through the single most defensible footbed engineering argument in the entire sandal category. The cork latex footbed, developed in the 1960s and maintained in essentially the same form since, molds to the specific contours of the individual wearer's foot over the first several weeks of wear, creating a custom support structure that no foam, gel, or generic cushioning system can replicate through a mass-produced, uniform construction applied identically to every size. The deep heel cup, the raised toe bar, the anatomical arch support are not marketing descriptions. They are structural features with documented biomechanical function that podiatrists have been recommending for decades, not because the brand courted the medical community, but because the construction earned that endorsement through the outcomes it produced. The vulcanized rubber outsole is fully resolable through Birkenstock's own repair program, which means the footbed, the most expensive and most personalized component, can be preserved indefinitely, while only the outsole requires periodic renewal. At $100 to $150, the realistic lifespan of a well-maintained pair, measured in years rather than seasons, divides the cost down to a daily rate that almost nothing else in this ranking can match, regardless of its lower sticker price. That resulting economics deserves more attention than it typically receives in sandal purchasing conversations. Most consumers treat sandal retirement as inevitable, an expected outcome built into the purchase from the start, because almost every sandal they have previously owned operated on an adhesive bonded construction that offered no realistic repair pathway once the sole began separating. Birkenstock's resolable construction fundamentally changes that expectation, shifting the sandal from a depreciating seasonal purchase into something closer to a maintained piece of kit whose lifespan is determined by the owner's willingness to care for it, rather than by the manufacturer's choice of bonding method. The next brand built its reputation on a single sandal silhouette so iconic that the fashion industry spent 30 years dismissing it before quietly placing it in every trend report as a must-have, without ever fully acknowledging that the construction had earned that status long before the trend cycle noticed. Number 10. Teva began as a river guide solution to a specific functional problem in 1984. A sandal that stayed on the foot in moving water without restricting the dexterity needed for technical outdoor work on river rocks. The adjustable webbing strap system, the aggressive traction outsole, and the water-resistant construction were not aesthetic decisions. They were engineering requirements driven by a use case where sandal failure had real physical consequences. That functional origin has never fully left the construction philosophy, even as Teva expanded into lifestyle and fashion territory. And the brand's core sandals retain an outsole traction and strap security standard that most fashion sandals, including several costing 3 times as much, do not approach because they were never designed for a surface more demanding than a polished restaurant floor. The Universal Sandals polyester webbing strap system uses a hardware construction that distributes stress across the full width of each strap junction, rather than concentrating it at a single adhesive bond point, which is why the strap system on a well-used pair of Tevas typically outlasts the strap system on most fashion sandals at comparable or higher prices by a considerable margin. At $50 to $85, Teva delivers an outdoor engineering standard at an accessible price that the lifestyle sandal market has never genuinely competed against on construction terms. If this list is changing how you look at the sandals in your summer rotation, hit the like button and subscribe right now. Every week we go exactly this deep into the construction behind the brands, the ones worth buying and the ones quietly overcharging you for a name. Number 9. Naot is an Israeli sandal brand founded in 1942 on a kibbutz in northern Israel, and that agricultural community origin has direct and traceable consequences for the construction philosophy the brand has maintained across 8 decades of continuous production without the acquisition pressure or margin-driven compromise that reshapes most brands eventually. The brand's signature cork and natural latex footbed uses a construction comparable to Birkenstock's anatomical approach, but with a proprietary shaping that several podiatrists and orthotic specialists have noted provides slightly different arch support geometry, making Naot a meaningful alternative for wearers whose specific foot anatomy responds better to a different contour profile. The footbed is removable and replaceable, which means the shoe itself can outlast multiple footbeds, rather than being discarded when the original cushioning compresses. The leather uppers are sourced from tanneries with documented environmental compliance standards, and the stitched construction at the sole, rather than purely adhesive bonding, provides structural durability that supports resoling through the brand's own repair network. At $100 to $160, Naot delivers an anatomical footbed and a genuine leather upper at a price point that positions it as a direct Birkenstock alternative, rather than a lesser option. Naot's kibbutz origin also carries a less obvious but genuinely consequential implication for the brand's long-term construction consistency. A brand founded within and still connected to a cooperative community structure operates under a different set of financial incentives than a brand owned by a private equity firm or a publicly traded conglomerate. The pressure to reduce per-unit costs by substituting a cheaper material or a faster bonding process, the pressure that has quietly degraded the construction quality of many formerly reliable mid-market sandal brands over time, is structurally different in a cooperative context where the community's long-term reputation is more directly tied to the product leaving the factory than a quarterly earnings report would ever capture. The next brand took a completely different approach to sandal construction, building its entire identity around a single handcrafting tradition that has remained structurally unchanged for over 2,000 years. Number 8. Tkees. Tkees built its reputation on one of the most counterintuitive constructions in accessible luxury sandals, a genuine leather flip-flop, engineered to the specific standard that the flip-flop format is almost universally assumed to be incapable of reaching. The dismissal of the flip-flop as a serious footwear investment is almost universal across the fashion industry, and for most flip-flops, that dismissal is accurate. A thin foam sole bonded to a synthetic strap is a disposable product correctly priced at under $10. Tkees started from the opposite premise, that the flip-flop format, built from genuine leather at a construction standard, applied to more expensive sandal formats, could function as a genuine wardrobe investment rather than a disposable beach accessory. The genuine leather footbed tans, softens, and takes on the specific imprint of the wearer's foot over time, developing the same custom-fitted quality associated with much more expensive sandal constructions. The leather strap uses a similar quality to the footbed rather than a cheaper synthetic or bonded leather substitute, which means the entire exposed surface of the sandal ages consistently rather than having one component degrade faster than the others. At $85 to $125, Tkees asks the consumer to reconsider what a flip-flop is capable of when the format is not constrained by the assumption that it should be disposable, which is either the most obvious reframing in accessible footwear or the most surprisingly underexplored one, depending on how long you have been accepting the assumption. The next brand took the heritage sandal argument and grounded it in a specific Mediterranean craft tradition that has never needed to update its construction method, because the method has never been improved upon. Number 7. Sandgrens. Sandgrens produces Swedish wooden clog sandals using a craft manufacturing process that the brand traces back directly to the traditional Nordic clog-making tradition, with a natural wood base shaped, finished, and fitted to an upper, using handcrafting stages that modern industrial production methods have eliminated from almost every other accessible clog brand. The solid natural wood base, cut from sustainably harvested linden or alderwood, provides a structural rigidity and a natural antimicrobial surface that synthetic and composite alternatives do not replicate, and the wood develops a slight, personalized flex pattern along the wearer's primary stress lines over years of use that makes a well-worn pair of Sandgrens measurably more comfortable for the specific individual wearing them than a brand new pair of the same style. The antimicrobial property of natural wood is worth naming specifically because it addresses one of the most consistent complaints in the sandal category without requiring any chemical treatment or synthetic additive. Most foam and synthetic footbed materials absorb moisture and provide an environment where odor-causing bacteria accumulate over a season of regular wear. Natural wood does not absorb moisture in the same way and contains naturally occurring compounds that inhibit bacterial growth at the footbed surface, which is why a pair of well-maintained Sandgrens worn daily through a full summer typically smells considerably better at season's end than a foam-soled alternative used across the same period. The leather uppers are sourced from European tanneries with documented quality standards and stitched to the wood base using a construction method that distributes the attachment stress far more evenly than the adhesive bonding used by lower-cost clog alternatives. At $80 to $135, Sandgrens delivers genuine craft clog construction at a price point that the heritage European clog market has historically reserved for considerably more expensive offerings. Number 6. Ancient Greek Sandals. Ancient Greek Sandals was founded in Athens using construction methods directly derived from the sandal-making tradition documented in ancient Greek art and archaeology, a lineage the brand takes seriously enough to employ artisans specifically trained in the techniques rather than simply borrowing the aesthetic reference for marketing purposes. The hand-braided leather construction used across the brand's signature styles requires a specific hand skill that cannot be replicated by industrial machinery, which means every sandal in the core collection involves a meaningful amount of skilled manual labor that directly affects both the price and the construction quality. The natural vegetable tanned leather used throughout the range develops a patina and softens in direct response to the wearer's specific movement patterns, creating the custom-fitted quality associated with bespoke footwear at a price point that does not require bespoke construction throughout. The toe post construction uses a riveted rather than purely adhesive attachment, distributing the mechanical stress of forward movement more broadly across the sandal structure rather than concentrating it at a single bond point. At $150 to $290, Ancient Greek Sandals sits at a meaningful premium that the genuine craft labor and the vegetable tanned leather sourcing justify more transparently than many comparable price points in the broader, accessible luxury sandal category. The next brand built a similarly craft-forward construction philosophy, but applied it to a minimalist, everyday silhouette rather than an occasion wear reference, making the quality argument accessible to a different and considerably larger daily wear context. Number 5. Nisolo. Nisolo was founded in Peru in 2011 with a specific founding argument that a fairly paid, ethically sourced leather sandal supply chain could produce a product competitive on both quality and price, With the conventional supply chains, it was explicitly built in opposition to. That founding argument has been validated, imperfectly and with ongoing challenges acknowledged openly by the brand, across more than a decade of documented production, including a published sustainability scorecard that rates the brand's own performance against its stated targets rather than simply claiming compliance with vague sustainability standards. The consumer has no way to verify independently. The leather sourcing uses vegetable tanned hides from Peruvian tanneries with documented labor and environmental compliance standards. And the hand-stitched construction at the sole uses techniques that the Peruvian shoemaking tradition has refined across generations of continuous craft practice. The construction quality reflects both the material sourcing and the labor investment, with leather uppers that develop a genuine patina rather than cracking and an outsole stitching that maintains integrity across years of regular wear, rather than unraveling within a season. Peru's shoemaking tradition is considerably less discussed in Western fashion media than Italian or Spanish craft heritage. But the technical level of the hand-stitching and lasting skills accumulated in the Peruvian shoemaking regions, where Nisolo manufactures, is genuinely comparable to the European traditions that command considerably more aspirational marketing language and considerably higher price premiums. The undervaluation of Peruvian craft heritage in Western fashion pricing is, in a direct sense, part of what makes Nisolo's price-to-quality argument possible. The same hand skills that would command a significant premium attached to a European country of origin label are available at a more honest price when the geography of the craft is assessed on its actual technical merits rather than its marketing heritage. At $100 to $160, Nisolo positions its sandals at a price point that reflects genuine production cost at a fair labor standard rather than a margin-padded retail markup. And the published sustainability scorecard gives the consumer a more objective tool for evaluating that claim than most brands with comparable pricing provide. The brand's transparency about where it falls short of its own targets is itself a form of credibility that polished, claim without verification sustainability marketing cannot replicate. If this ranking is making you reconsider the sandals you have been reaching for every summer, without question, subscribe right now. The final 4 brands are where the construction argument reaches its most compelling conclusion, and the value case gets genuinely difficult to argue against. Number 4. Madewell. Madewell earns its position on this list through one of the more disciplined, accessible luxury value propositions available in summer footwear. A consistent leather sourcing standard applied across a sandal range priced below the heritage European brands it competes against in construction quality without a corresponding reduction in the materials that actually determine how the sandal ages. The brand's leather sandals use a full-grain or top-grain leather upper at a quality tier that holds its shape, softens rather than cracks, and develops the characteristic patina that signals genuine leather rather than a bonded or corrected grain substitute. The sole construction across the core sandal range uses a cemented construction with sufficient stitching reinforcement to resist the delamination at the toe and heel that affects purely adhesive bonded alternatives within a season or two of regular outdoor wear. At $68 to $128, Madewell delivers leather quality and construction integrity that several European brands at $150 to $200 do not consistently match once the materials are compared directly rather than judged by country of origin alone. The brand's accessible retail presence and consistent restocking of core styles also means that a well-loved pair can be replicated precisely when it eventually wears through, a practical consideration that limited edition and small batch brands on this list cannot offer with the same reliability. The next brand took the minimal construction argument to its logical extreme, building its entire identity around the single most elemental sandal construction available and proving that the simplest possible design, executed with genuinely excellent materials, produces one of the most defensible investments in summer footwear. Number 3. Birkenstock's sibling, Papillio. Papillio, Birkenstock's fashion-forward sub-brand, applies the same cork latex anatomical footbed construction that earned Birkenstock its podiatric credibility to a range of silhouettes designed for consumers who want the functional engineering without the deliberately utilitarian aesthetic of the parent brand. The footbed construction is identical to Birkenstock's core range. The same cork latex blend, the same deep heel cup, the same raised toe bar, the same arch support geometry that has accumulated decades of podiatric endorsement. The difference is entirely in the upper design, where Papillio introduces platform heights, embellished straps, and more fashion-forward silhouettes that sit closer to the trend-adjacent sandal market without compromising the foundational engineering underneath. At $100 to $145, Papillio delivers the single most clinically documented footbed, available in accessible sandals inside a silhouette range broad enough to accommodate wardrobes that the parent brand's more utilitarian aesthetic does not fully serve. For the consumer who wants Birkenstock's engineering in a design that photographs differently, Papillio is the answer the parent brand itself created, rather than leaving to a competitor. The next brand represents something genuinely different from every brand ranked above it. A construction philosophy that places the shoe's relationship to the wearer's long-term foot health above every other design consideration, including fashion, and has built a loyal, multi-generational customer base specifically through that uncompromising prioritization. Number 2. Vionic was founded with direct involvement from podiatric biomechanics research, and the resulting construction philosophy reflects a medical-grade understanding of foot function that most sandal brands, regardless of how much they invest in comfort marketing language, do not apply with comparable rigor to their actual design decisions. The brand's OrthoHeal technology, developed from a documented biomechanical research base, incorporates a heel cup depth, an arch profile, and a metatarsal support geometry specifically calibrated to align the foot, ankle, and knee through the natural walking stride, rather than simply cushioning the existing alignment. That distinction between support engineering and cushioning engineering is clinically significant. A cushioned footbed makes pressure more comfortable without changing the underlying mechanical load. An orthotic-grade support system changes where the load is applied in the first place. The leather uppers across Vionic's premium sandal range use a genuine leather sourcing standard with an adjustable strap system specifically designed to accommodate foot swelling across a full day of wear, a consideration that most fashion sandal designs, optimized for fit at the point of purchase in a climate-controlled store, do not build into the construction. At $85 to $165, Vionic delivers a biomechanics-informed construction standard that several prescription orthotic brands charge considerably more to provide through a clinical rather than a retail channel. That adjustable strap detail is worth dwelling on specifically because foot swelling across a day of wear is genuinely universal rather than a niche concern limited to people with specific medical conditions. Most feet expand measurably between morning and late afternoon, a physiological reality that fashion sandal design routinely ignores in favor of a fit calibrated for the controlled environment of a store try-on. A sandal that fits perfectly at 10 in the morning and cuts across the top of the foot by 4 in the afternoon is not a sandal with a sizing problem. It is a sandal whose design process did not include the person who would actually wear it through a full day. One brand remains. It earns the top position on this list by applying a direct manufacturing relationship to the highest quality leather sourcing available in the accessible sandal category, eliminating the markup layers that account for the majority of the price difference between what a sandal costs to produce and what the conventional retail model charges the consumer to access it. Number 1. Margaux earns the top position on this list through the same structural argument that earned it the top position in the women's shoe ranking. A direct-to-consumer manufacturing model applied to the most premium leather sourcing available in the accessible category, eliminating every layer of wholesale and retail markup that the conventional sandal market uses to convert a reasonable production cost into an unreasonable retail price. The brand manufactures its sandal range in the same family-owned Spanish and Italian factories, producing footwear for several European heritage houses, using full-grain leather uppers and a sole attachment construction that supports resoling through the brand's own repair program. That resoling option is the single most important long-term value distinction between Margaux and every fast fashion or mid-market sandal brand ranked below it, because it converts a single upfront purchase into a potentially indefinite ownership relationship rather than a two-season wear cycle ending in a discarded pair. The leather quality disclosed on the brand's product pages reflects a sourcing standard that the price point, at $165 to $245, would suggest in a conventional luxury retail context, and that Margaux actually delivers, rather than simply implying through packaging and brand positioning. The strap construction uses a stitched, rather than purely cemented attachment at the junction points where stress concentrates during extended walking, the specific failure point at which most sandals at this price point or lower eventually give way under sustained use. That construction detail is invisible at the point of purchase and determinative of the sandal's actual longevity, once the glamour of a new purchase fades and the shoe begins accumulating the kind of wear that separates construction quality from construction theater. The willingness to disclose that specific construction detail publicly, naming the stitched attachment as a deliberate choice and explaining its functional consequence, is itself a signal worth noting. Most brands do not explain their construction decisions in technical terms, because doing so would invite the comparison their construction cannot survive. A brand that publishes its construction rationale openly is a brand whose construction rationale can withstand the scrutiny that publication invites, and that willingness to be examined directly is, across the full 11 brands examined on this list, one of the more reliable proxies for genuine quality available to a consumer who cannot physically inspect every sandal on the shelf before committing to a purchase. For the consumer who has spent several seasons replacing mid-market sandals that looked excellent in the store and fell apart within a summer of regular wear, Margaux's construction standard, disclosed transparently and delivered consistently, represents the first sandal purchase that genuinely does not need to be repeated. The next time you are standing in a sandal aisle, deciding whether the price is justified, turn the sandal over. That single side of the shoe will tell you more about what you are buying than the front label, the marketing copy, and the brand name will ever volunteer on their own. Click the next video on the left to see exactly which brands are quietly overcharging you across the rest of your summer wardrobe, because the sandal is only the beginning of that conversation.